Hey guys, Neel here, back with another video. So today I wanted to discuss the most efficient ways of studying. Now, before we get into the actual details of the techniques and methods that I've started to implement, I'm learning to implement a bit better, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. Basically, everything I've learned has been from YouTube. So this is not something that I've invented by myself. I've just watched a lot of videos and put a lot of my own time trying to dissect these videos and then put them into practice. So over here, I just want to offer you perhaps a combination of everything I've watched into sort of condensed final thing, just so that you guys just know. Perhaps I would describe it as the theory behind studying, because you may well already be implementing these sort of techniques, but if you don't, then I hope to perhaps convince you to start. And if you already do, then I hope to perhaps, I mean, help you get a better understanding of really what it is that's happening when you're studying. So I think without further ado, we can just jump straight into the actual content of this video. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go step by step, and I'm gonna lay it out because it's actually one of the techniques that I'm gonna talk about later. So I'm gonna lay out what we're gonna be covering here today. So I've got trusty old whiteboard. Just gonna quickly write down everything that we're gonna cover. So okay, so I've listed everything out here. So running through here. So the first thing we're going to be covering today is accumulation. Then we're going to be moving on to understanding. Then the two most important stages, as I'll go on to explain in a bit, memorization, and finally applying it. Okay, so let's just dive into accumulation. Now, accumulation is the simplest stage, and it's perhaps the most self-explanatory when it comes to the technique we're going to be using here. So I think it's even a bit of a stretch to call it technique. It's just the way that we're going to try and minimize the amount of time we've wasted over here. So what you want to do with accumulation is you want to try and collect all the resources that you think are going to be useful towards your learning, your understanding, your applying it, your practice, all that in one folder for, let's say, a subject, right? If you want to go topic wise, that's also perfectly fine. Whatever way it suits you, you can modify it, that's good. But what I highly recommend is just taking all these resources and just putting them in one folder. Now, in my personal experience, accumulation's the time where I've wasted, it's the process or the stage rather, where I've wasted the most amount of my time. Because the thing with accumulation is, it's not really a part of actually learning anything at all. So what you do is, you spend hours online trying to find resources, convincing yourself that, this is the best use of your time, and, just scouring through the internet, scouring through social media, asking your seniors, asking, your classmates, what websites are they using, where are they getting the questions from, all this. And, there is obviously a balance you have to strike. You definitely have to get these resources, but if you are like I was, and you just spent just so much time on this, it's probably really a procrastination tool. So what you really want to do is you want to ask a senior. You want to perhaps find a crucial Reddit thread, or some sort of other social media site, or get a friend together. You split the work half. Let's try and you find this, I find that, and you just make this one folder where everything you need, like I said, is there. And that's all you're going to be using. Now, another problem I had was that I actually just hoarded all the resources I could find. Like, I just kept it under my desk, I kept it in a shelf, I kept it on my desk, and they just sat there collecting dust. So that's something which is absolutely not recommended, because it just took up my space, it made my work area dirty, it was clumsy, didn't look good, it just wasn't very nice. So what you want to do is, if you want to speed up this sorting process of what is really essential, you look at something and you'll be like, am I going to use this to revise for my final board examination? Am I gonna trust this to take me from where I am now, perhaps at the start of this 2-year course or this 1-year course or whatever it is, and then let it take me all the way to the end? Do I trust it? You got to ask this 1 or 2 questions, 3 questions in your head, and that's going to speed it up. Because yes or no answers, and trust me, I really hope you'll know that, oh, yes, I am going to use this, no, I'm not going to use this. And then as soon as you know that, okay, accumulation process, everything's in one folder. You will be using, this folder's of high utility value, I would say, because everything there has a specific purpose, everything there can really help you. Okay, accumulation process done. So now this is what, in my opinion, understanding really comes down to. It comes down to 2 techniques. And the first one is very well known, the Feynman technique. And the second one, that's also widely used, but I've just put a personal term I just came up with. I'd like to refer to it as, I just came up with it now, but that's fine. I'll call it the day-by-day method. So, in my opinion, the key to understanding lies to the combination of these 2 methods. So, here's the deal. So, what is the Feynman technique? Let's get started with that. So, some of you may recognize the name Feynman. I'm pretty sure I spelled the name wrong here, but that's okay. So, Richard Feynman was this physicist who was just incredibly popular. The guy had 3 wives. The guy was immensely successful in his work in physics. He published a couple papers on biology, but the thing he even played in a band in South America for a fair bit of a while, so to say. But through all these different accolades, and he won a Nobel Prize as well. Sorry if I'm rambling a bit, but I just love Feynman. Yes, but the thing that he was best known for was his lectures, and specifically he was known as the Great Explainer, because he just had this knack of just explaining ridiculously complex ideas to just people who are just very basic understanding. He could simplify things so well because he understood it so well, and the way he understood things so well, that's what today we're going to be talking about, the Feynman technique. So what Feynman did was he challenged himself to explain things to people who didn't have much background knowledge, like I just said. So how you can apply this is, you can be like, okay, so I don't understand this process, let's say. I don't understand, what is happening in this process. Why is it happening? What's happening here? Blah blah. You have all these different questions about this one particular really key cycle or process that you need to learn for your exam or for your syllabus, for your curricula, right? So what you do is you say, just imagine, you're having a conversation with a 5-year-old, and your job is to explain this concept to him. So to really test your understanding of a concept, you need to simplify it to this 5-year-old, right? Because obviously he's not going to be able to understand all these hi-fi key terms, right? So you simplify it, and if you do eventually find a way to explain it in quick, concise, clear manner, right? And this does not necessarily have to be a 5-year-old. It can be your mom, be your dad, be your brother, be your sister, whoever, right? And if you're able to do that, then that means you've understood it. So that in these, it's such commonplace today that you're like, oh dude, I just don't know how to explain it. Oh, I can't explain it. So to me, that's perhaps a sign that I don't really understand that concept if I can't really explain the concept, because I've known about this Feynman technique, I've learned about it, and I'm starting to implement it myself. But the Feynman technique on its own is not the answer. The Feynman technique in combination with the day-by-day method, now that's key. So what is the day-by-day method? So the day-by-day method is, as you're going along, as you're studying chapter by chapter, unit by unit, at any point in time you don't understand something, you immediately go after it and try and clear up that doubt. Now I know this sounds extremely intuitive, like, Neil, we all do that. You're just some special case. Well, maybe I am, because what happened with me was I always I just slacked off. I was just like, dude, all these chapters are coming. When I have to study for the exam, I'll clear up all the doubts then. But that never worked. It never paid dividends to me, because there were just too many doubts and they all accumulated. So the learning curve was just so steep in such a short period of time, so it could not be done. So what I've learned now is, as you go along in a chapter, on that day, you didn't understand something, you feel like you didn't grasp it to the extent that you really need to, right? Then you ask your teacher after class, you ask your friend, you message your friend, you ask your friend for their notes, you come home and you be like, okay, I'm gonna look through this chapter, I'm gonna read through this again, I'm gonna use this Feynman method, I'm gonna try and explain it, I'm gonna look in the mirror, I'm gonna explain it. And you use this on a day-by-day method. That's why I call it the day-by-day method, because you're trying to do this every single day. And any point in time you don't understand something, you immediately go after it like a madman. You're obsessed with understanding this one thing. That's the word I would use. You really want to get obsessed with it, and to the point that you really are precise with your explanation. That's what I mean here. So just because the way that modern curricula are structured today is that the way the chapters, the difficulty level of the chapters, so to say, it increases with time. So as you go through the course, more and more, the chapters are just becoming harder. And the particular reason for that is that actually the later chapters, the ones you're going to be learning towards the end of the course, perhaps, those ones are actually built upon the foundation that you built in the early chapters. So the thing with not understanding something here is you're going to see it's going to have a ripple effect, and you're not going to be able to understand the entire last chapter or the last 3 chapters or the last 4 chapters. It could be really bad for you. But by implementing this day-by-day method, at this point if you have a doubt, okay, it's cleared. This point you have a doubt, okay, cleared. This point you have a doubt, okay, cleared. So that way, your understanding, when you come back to this, the last chapter, everything else is rock solid. So that's going to allow you to understand that properly. But that being said, understanding and accumulation, those two are done. But now we're going to move on to the 2 most important aspects of getting good grades, of learning, of remembering something, of being able to apply it. Okay, stage 3 of your studying journey, memorization. So here's the deal. Just like we can break down understanding into 2 main areas or concepts, we can break down understanding into 2 as well: active recall and spaced repetition. So let's just get started on active recall, because if there's one thing you need to take away from this entire video, it's active recall. Now these 2 are really new terms, so I'm going to try and explain them more thoroughly than the others. So the thing is, active recall is essentially the process of trying to retrieve something from your brain. So suppose I want to learn the definition of an element, right? So now perhaps one method I could do it as is I could write down a question: Neel, define element. So utilizing the folder I have, I'd already read the definition of element somewhere in all the resources I'd collected, right? So now I am able to recall. I go through my head and I'm trying to locate the location, the position of the definition of element within my neural network. So okay, then I get the definition of element. Definition of element is so and so, right? Got it. But then what's actually happening, and why is this so effective? Because numerous psychological studies have been done, and this is miles above any other studying technique. The analysis has been done, The literature, scientific literature on this is very, 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 one-sided. It's just showing active recall is the most efficient. And I will link those videos that I talked about in the introduction below, because those go through more in a more thorough manner, and they actually analyze and refer to these studies when explaining active recall. So I'm going to link that down in the description below. But what happens is that, in the process of searching, and then eventually getting it, what's actually happening is my neural connections between definition of element, that question, and then the actual answer to that question. What is an element? An element is a substance that cannot be broken down into a simpler form. It only contains one type of atom, chemically pure, whatever, blah blah blah, right? So I'm linking those two things, and the neural connection is getting stronger. So next time I do it, I can recall it faster, right? And that way, in the exam, if they give you a question saying list out the 3 properties of something, describe the 6 stages of this process, then because I'm able to retrieve things at such a fast pace, then all of a sudden it takes me literally 0 seconds to write down. And that way you're saving more time in your examination paper. You have more time to attack the hard questions where more applying is needed, and you're securing these 3 marks, these 6 marks, free of cost. They're just free marks to you, right? But with active recall, you need spaced repetition. Now, spaced repetition is the idea of using active recall at selected intervals. Now, the scientific reasoning behind this is actually quite easy to explain, and I'm just going to draw one simple graph here that should really just help you understand the theory that I was talking about in the introduction. What's the theory of studying? What's the theory here? So the thing is that we draw an axis, okay, and over here it's percentage remembered under percentage R, right? And then over here it's time. So a psychologist, you can research this on the internet if you like, he did a study, and what he learned was that there's something called the forgetting curve. It's as time goes on, you find it harder and harder to remember a thing. That's pretty intuitive. As you go on in life, you can't remember some stuff that you learned before if you haven't revised it. Pretty intuitive, right? So you get a curve, something like this. Makes sense. So spaced repetition means that at interval, but this curve is, just to mention, this curve is without revision or active recall at intervals. So spaced repetition does that very thing. So let's say over here at this point on the curve, I actually revise this concept again. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a new forgetting curve, and that's going to take a longer time to get to the same point of percentage remembered, less like the amount I've forgotten. And if you just keep on doing this in long intervals, it just delays that forgetting curve. It makes it harder to forget stuff because you've revised it at sufficient intervals. And that's really the key to memorization. Active recall, spaced repetition, retrieval from your brain, trying to remember stuff at spaced intervals, because that ultimately delays the forgetting curve. It enhances your neural connections. I'm an expert on biology here, but that's my intuitive understanding of the matter. And that's ultimately going to lead to just faster memorization, more efficient memorization, and it's going to overall help you in your exams. Okay, now here's the deal. We've arrived at, in my opinion, the most important stage of your entire learning and examination review process: applying it. Now here's the deal. Applying it is just simply getting a bunch of practice questions, topical questions, past papers, question banks, worksheets, anything, right? You get those questions and you sit and do them. You drill them into yourself. And the thing is that this is such a crucial thing because you really get to test out how well you've understood those concepts we've learned before, right? By trying to phrase it you've used the Feynman technique, let's say, to understand the concept. Now you need to try and frame it in the exam specific key terms that you've memorized in active recall. I don't think I mentioned it, but in active recall, I'm assuming you've understood everything. So now you're gonna try and memorize everything in the absolutely the proper language that they expect in the exam, the key terms, so to say, right? So in the applying it stage, you're just doing the questions. You're trying to retrieve it in an exam sort of situation. You're trying to apply the concept. If it's maths, so to say, you've understood the concept. You've understood probability. Let's say, and then now your job is to do a question on it. If you didn't get the question, then perhaps you didn't understand it. So okay, do another question. Okay, you didn't get this one as well. Okay, perhaps I'm gonna do one more and then see. Okay, I didn't get this one. Okay, I gotta go back and see probability, right? So this way you're actually trying to find, the questions are actually teaching you where you're weak. And that's why, in my opinion, you need to spend the most time doing these questions. Another tip that I would throw in there is what I do is I do these worksheets and I sit and go through the mark schemes, right? These mark schemes often have the perfect way because these are the examiner recommended answers, right? These have the perfect wordings. So I just make a huge Google Doc where I've collected all these mark schemes, and what I do is I literally memorize these mark schemes. So I go in the exam and they ask me to define the elements, so to say. I know that definition word to word from the mark scheme because I've done the question. And by doing these questions, so to say, by doing them again and again and doing different types of questions, doing these hard questions, challenging your understanding, you're widening your knowledge of the subject. And then in addition to that, you're in maths, like that example I gave about probability, now you know how to solve one more question, and that's going to expand your knowledge of how to solve. So in case they give something that you haven't even covered in your worksheets, because you've gone all through all these questions and you've figured out a sort of consistent approach you can apply that works for you, you can now go and tackle that even if it's something you've never seen before in the exam, because you're using all that technique and that method you've used here to go and apply it in the exam. That's really, really helpful, and that's what I find the most. I think that's really, really a huge benefit if you're going to use the steps in this process, right? But I think a note out there is this is a general list. Now you need to try and really make this very precise and specific to your subject. What subject are you studying? So let's say I'm studying physics, but you're studying English literature. So for physics, there's not really much for me to memorize. It's about solving the problems. So the place where there's all these question banks online. So I'm gonna go and find some question banks. That's gonna take me 5 seconds. So accumulation done. The textbook I've got doesn't really matter about the explanation because it's mainly problem solving. So then I'm gonna spend all my time on understanding and solving the problems. In fact, I would spend 90% of my time just solving problems and 10% understanding. And then if you're studying English literature or language, then you got to switch it up a bit again. You've got to find some good analysis. So accumulation time will take a bit more. Then understanding time will definitely take less. In English, perhaps not that much to understand. Analysis maybe some bit to understand, but 2%, 5% of your time is going to be used up there, right? Then memorization, that's dependent really on what sort of literature you're studying, but definitely not an insane amount of time. And then instead of solving problems, you're just going to be writing your essays, right? You're going to be writing your answers. But if I'm studying biology, just another example, now all of a sudden accumulation, that really depends again. But now understanding might take a fair bit of time, but might not take too long. But I'm going to spend a lot of time memorizing stuff, because biology is like that. There's not too much problem solving. It's about the processes, it's about properties, it's about stating stuff, definitions, mainly that sort of stuff, right? So now exponentially my time on, not exponentially, that's the wrong use of the word. Um, no, now a lot of my time is just being directed towards memorizing thing. So now you can see how this is splitting up. Now the time devoted to each of these four stages is getting split up dependent on the subject. But just the final personal advice I have to give is that just do the practice questions. That's crucial. But more than doing an insane volume of these practice questions, is look at the question, sit with the question, you know, go back at it again. You didn't understand the concept, go back at it again, sit with the thing. You didn't get it right once, try it again. You didn't get it right then, try it again. Okay, you still didn't get it right, talk to somebody about it. Approach your teacher. Can't approach your teacher, maybe look online. Can't look on, I mean, still not getting it, approach your tuition center. You need to be strategically smart about these things. That's perhaps something I'm not stressing on enough, but you need to be smart about these things. You need to, I don't have the final say here, so you gotta look at your own situation and apply these principles specifically to your situation in the right proportions, in the exact proportions needed. And you know, I don't know, I'm just gonna mention it here, but if you're struggling with procrastination like I have for, I really, even now it's a bit of a problem, but nowhere near as the extent I had before, then I don't know if I'll make a video on this in the future, specifically on this topic of stopping procrastination, but my advice to you is figure out why you're doing this. Why do you want to get good marks? Is it because, you know, you feel peer pressure? Be honest with yourself. You can't hide it. So, do you really want good marks? Do you really care? Why? Why do you think getting good marks is a good idea? Okay, so you got to reason with yourself. Okay, it is a good idea. Why is it a good idea? Okay, because, you know, if I get good marks, I go to a good university. Good university means what? I get more opportunities to do exactly what I want to do. It makes my life easier down the road when I don't have to fight as hard, and I can divert my energy doing stuff that I really, really like. So that's why I should get good marks. And what's another reason? I want to make my family proud. I want to make my dad proud. I want to make my mom proud that yes, I can do it. So you got to reason with yourself a bit. You got to ask yourself why. You got to question yourself. That's something I've found myself doing a lot. You know, I just question myself. I'm like, dude, why am I upset of this exam score? I didn't study enough, so I don't deserve it. Be honest with yourself. You didn't study enough, and you're telling yourself you're gonna pass. You expect more of yourself. No, you don't. You don't deserve good marks. If you didn't study hard enough, then why should you get good marks? That doesn't make any sense. So be honest with yourself. Ask yourself why. Question yourself, and just, you know, talk to people. Get advice. Don't make the getting advice stop you from actually studying, because that's just procrastination. And if you need anything, let me know in the comments section below. Like, share, subscribe. I just hope that you watched the video and you got something out of this more than any of that stuff. Just hope you've learned something here, because this is something that took me quite a while to actually come to and realize, and this sort of stuff. So I really hope this helped you. And yeah, take care. Hopefully I can share more of my stuff with you guys in the coming months, in the foreseeable future, and there isn't as big of a video gap. But yeah, take care.